Hey everyone, and welcome to my time-lapse about this watch you got on screen here. It literally goes all the way from the beginning, but before I get into talking about kind of my workflow and all the other stuff, I get that it can be annoying having someone commentate. I'm going to try and sit here for the whole thing and talk about what I'm doing and that. So if you're not really interested in what I'm saying, that's fair enough. I wouldn't want to listen to me for half an hour, but feel free to mute the sound and chuck some of your own music on, maybe double speed it as well. I didn't want to speed it up too much, it's already like 25 times normal speed. So yeah, I thought you guys can just double speed it on the YouTube built-in thing and you'll get it to around, I don't know, probably about 15-20 minutes. That should be pretty good. And then just mute and put your own music on. But yeah, for those of you who are interested in the commentary, and I thought I'd just put the little bit of extra effort in to talk about what goes through my head and how I go about doing these things, and the challenges I had with this watch. So I'd like to start by talking a bit about where the idea for the watch came from, and it really is quite simple. It came from my wrist. So this is basically the exact watch that I have in real life. The reason you see the picture. Oh yeah, this is funny. So I plugged the photo in, so that's what I was about to mention there. You seen there that the height map looked like it was done. That was just, I'd put a photograph from real world of the watch that I was trying to make, which is obviously my one, and you can see it there in the 2D viewport now. And yeah, I plugged that into the height map, and yeah, I was just like, kind of made me think a bit more like, God, we got a long way to go. There's so much detail in this thing, and that is something that really struck me when I looked at this, and what made me want to try and tackle it. Like, if you actually, look at the photo a bit, which it'll come up several times throughout the thing. You see it there now, popping in and out. But it did have a lot of small details in, and that kind of what drew me to it when I first got it, and I looked at it, and as you do when you're checking the time, I'd occasionally just go, bored on the train, and just sort of study it. How game devs work, we'll study pretty much anything. So if you got something pretty intricate like this watch on your wrist, you're gonna look at it a bit longer every now and then. So yeah, the way I sort of started it was I looked at the the sort of displays. There's like 3 kind of rings at the top, and then those 2 kind of, I don't even know what shape that is. It was really strange. It's like a cut out square though, where the minutes, seconds, day, and hours go. So yeah, I thought I'd start literally at the bottom and build my way up. So that's kind of where it began. You can see here just now I'm actually rotating the reference image slightly, just so I can make the hands actually straight. That came in really useful. So basically what I used is I just had a photo and I just chucked it in a blend node with a 50% copy on it, and then whatever I was working on I just put it in the top slot of the blend node and just preview the node. I also, you may notice there I have 2 transform nodes. I think at the moment there isn't, there's the ones for the hands, but at the moment I think there's only 1 there. The nature of the photo I took actually had 2, what would you call it? Oh right, yeah, I needed 2 because the nature of perspective, because it's quite a thick watch. A lot of people who see me wearing it in real life think, Dan, that watch is way too big for you, because I'm quite a small guy. So yeah, it meant that I had to have a slightly offset version. Pardon me. I had to have like a slightly offset version for the top sections and the bottom sections, because the nature of the photo meant that it wasn't perfectly top down. So I had 2 just to try and help me make it accurate. And then I had the final, little bits kind of blended together. Sorry, just let me take a drink. Oh, sorry about that. I am trying to speak quietly because it's like 2:30. I've literally just posted it to ArtStation, and I really wanted to put commentary on this thing, and I want to set it off to render before I go to bed. So, well, this bit was interesting. So I had to go into Photoshop, and I basically redid the lines. So you've seen there because all of these, I guess you'd call them like the 5-minute markers. They're actually different sizes and thicknesses, which was really annoying because it meant that it wasn't just as simple as using one splatter circular. I had to use 3 and mask them out, so you can see me doing that. And then it got even more annoying because, you know, it kind of cuts into at some places but then doesn't in others, so it really meant that I had to think about it a lot. And I tried to start, if you remember, right back at the start of this time lapse, and it was only like a couple of minutes ago now, but there's been so much going on already. I actually tried to start with this section, but there was just no way because it was too intricate, so I had to start with the bottom, because it was like, yeah, it was like starting kind of like halfway through. It's almost like modelling a gun and starting with the, like, you know, the magazine or something. It's like, you can, but, you know, most people don't choose to do that. I'm not a weapons artist, so I'm not really, you know, probably maybe a bad analogy there. And the shape mapper came in really handy for this bit. I've had a few, there was like a few moments here where I kind of surprised myself. By no means am I one, you know, like a Daniel Theiger level designer user, you know. I believe Enrico Talaman's a really good one as well. Sorry if I'm butchering that name. You know, there's some amazing designer artists out there, and I definitely don't consider myself one of them. Definitely inspired by them, and you'll probably see some of their workflows come out in here. You know, I can't remember who it is now, but someone I watch is a big fan of the max lighting node, so I use that quite a lot, especially when you're layering things. It's not always a good idea to use the height blend node, just because you can kind of butcher your own sort of values. You know, you don't want to clamp everything too much, because you don't want to, like, you know, kind of spend all that time doing detail and then lose it all because you've offset the height too much. And you'll see when I start blending things, because I think I'm about to start blending stuff now, probably just now actually, we're about to see it. You see me spending quite a bit of time trying to work out the height values, adjusting different settings, and you see me masking things out because, like, the certain things cut other things up. It's really quite, yeah, it's quite annoying really. I'm kind of glad it's over, to be honest. There was a lot of thinking, a lot of transform nodes personally. Yeah, you see it there, the clamping of the ring, so you'll see that pop up in a sec when I get the right balance of settings. But at the moment but there you go, it's just popped up, and that's just using the right thing. Worth noting that if there's any, you know, parts of this that interest you, what's going on, you can always, as I said at the beginning, like, you know, you can double speed it, or feel free to quarter speed a certain section of it. I wouldn't wish that on anyone to quarter speed the whole thing, or I don't know what the lowest setting is on YouTube, but you should get a pretty good idea what's going on if you do that. I wouldn't try following along because it just sounds painful, but there's certain elements that you could probably learn from if you're like, oh, how do you do that bit? So yeah, on we go. God, I really am gonna keep talking, aren't I? Jesus Christ, I've got 8 minutes in. I guess we're too deep now to cut it out. So yeah, other things that I thought were, you know, pretty challenging about this, besides just the general shape and awkwardness of it. This part was kind of annoying, trying to work this bit out, because you'll see it here, me trying to line it up. You see how it kind of flattens off? It's actually where the 5... excuse me, the 5 dots appear a bit later on. Took me ages to kind of work that out. I mean, it felt like ages. I don't know if I've already done it in the time lapse, but I think what happened is I ended up going a bit, zooming in on it. Yeah, here I realised that it's going in because we're losing a strip of pixels, like a strip of black pixels where the mask comes in. So I think I end up rethinking that whole thing because it was kind of flawed, and I definitely recommend doing that. Like, if you find yourself just staring at the same problem for a while, like, just maybe delete what you've done and come back at it from a different angle, because I often find myself getting caught up with the nodes that I'm working with. You see here, I end up getting a nice compromise. I ended up switching it back to an RGB value to allow me to alpha out the black, and that's worked pretty well. And then I just switched it back over to grayscale again later on. So yeah, that works pretty well. As for you know, the dots and stuff, these things, there's some parts of it, so just to move this thing, if that came up on the sound. Yeah, there's some things that, like, were super easy, and then other things that were really hard, and then definitely other things that I thought was going to be easy and then ended up being super hard. So, like, for example, the screens at the bottom you see me editing now, I thought they were going to be ridiculously difficult, but by the time I got to them, I was already I'd solved so many other things. I was when you're working in 3D and then your brain starts just switching on, solving problems before you even think about it, and you zone out, and then 2 hours later you're done. That's kind of what happened in a few different places here. You definitely see me start slowing down towards the end as well. That's just because I started burning out, and I think this time lapse is going to be a good example of how burnout can affect people, because I started really strong, the pace, and it really did taper off at the end. I was actually working in the days and then just finishing work. We're all working from home at the moment due to the virus, so I was literally just like, as soon as I finished work, just hopping back on this, and that was literally me. So I started this on, I don't know, Wednesday or something. Yeah, it must have been Wednesday. Saturday today, yeah. So I started it Wednesday, and then Thursday, and then Friday, and then the time lapse ends on Friday. And today it's Saturday, and I spent Saturday just doing my renders essentially, and fixing a couple more bugs. That would have been they were really, nothing really interesting to watch in a time lapse. There was no real work getting done. It was just me while I was doing my rendering. I'd be like, oh god, there's something I've spotted, 2 pixels there, or something not quite lined up there, or I could do with blurring that more. Just adjustments you do while you're doing stuff. I also at the end made it a bit more user friendly to design your own watches. You may have seen on the ArtStation post the different coloured versions, so I put that in for myself for my own sanity, because I was going insane with the rendering. I thought it'd be cool to have different colour variations, so I rang my buddy up, and we just sort of sat there and designed a few watches, which was quite nice. Definitely a well needed break. But now we're almost coming to the end of the stages of the modelling part. This part in particular was definitely easier than I thought it was going to be. I was really dreading this part, looking at the watch in real life. I thought this was going to be ludicrously difficult, but I was kind of built on what I already had, and it definitely helped me a lot. So you can see my node, and they started quite neat actually, looking at it now, oh god, yeah, here we go, the fonts. So this was interesting. This took me ages, but basically I couldn't find the font that the watch used, because the only G-Shock font I could find was the old G-Shock font. And then I had this horrible problem of not being able to install fonts. Why is it so hard? So you'll see here, I couldn't find it. I genuinely couldn't work it out. It's really frustrating me. I couldn't get it to work. I even tried it on a different computer. I tried it on I logged back onto my work computer and just tried to install a font, and I couldn't get it to work on Designer on that one. That's a different version. That's the latest one. I couldn't get it to work on this one. I actually made this in, I don't know, it was 2018 or something like that, 2018-19 version of Designer, and then today when I was doing the presets, because they were bugged on the build I was on, I had to get the latest, which then broke a couple other things which I had to fix. But yeah, essentially my kind of way around it in the end was the font's not working. I've used fonts before, for some reason they're not working, so in the end we know you have the golden rule of 100% Substance Designer, and I still stand by that, because I genuinely believe, to say that it wasn't 100% Substance Designer for the sake of, an atlas of fonts, just for the sake of, it wasn't actually working, the tech, yeah, so I was suffering bugs. In the end, you'll see me, I write a function to basically update the time in real time, I guess that's the word, and I managed to get it working then, and I realised that you can actually reference fonts. So you can, if you try and drag and drop it in, into your resource folder, it doesn't work, but if you import and link it, it does. But by then I'd already done all this, so I wasn't gonna go back and redo it all. But yeah, that was kind of annoying in hindsight, because I was like, oh, I spent all that time doing this bit, and basically my workflow here was just I had my atlas and I'd just crop it and move it around and then use the shape mapper to sort of place it. And yeah, it was a pretty arduous process, but I think it was worth it in the end. Yeah, it just frustrates me a bit how I didn't actually get the opportunity to do, that atlas in within the tools in Designer, but I think you guys will all agree that it's not really something to get worked up over, you know what I mean? It was, and just things break sometimes, and I guess it's part of the job, being able to improvise. And yeah, I'm just glad I worked it out in the end, so in future, when I come across things like text, which I have done before, like I said, I'm able to get through that. So yeah, this bit was just long. I don't even know what time it was when I was doing this, but it was definitely coming towards the end of the night. All 3 days of seamless work took me like 15 hours, I believe. There was it was about 15 hours. I think it worked out 14 and a half hours. So yeah. Oh yeah, at this point I realised that I'd forgotten to do the sort of bits where the buttons go, so that's me about to do that now. This bit worked quite well. I was kind of worried about it when I started it, but yeah, it ended up working out alright in the end. At this point I was starting to get pretty excited, because I realised that, when you do a project and you start to realise, oh my god, I've kind of got past the wall of it being impossible now. Like, you start and you think, god, you can do it, but you're like, god knows if I'll even finish it, or I've started so many projects and just kind of had to shelve them because things have come up. But yeah, this one, for whatever reason, I pushed through with it, and it was kind of this point where I was like, okay, we really are getting somewhere now. And there is still a lot of problems with it. Personally, I don't know, I think I've done the best I can do with my current skill level, but I think it's definitely something I'm going to look back on and kind of be annoyed at it. And that's kind of one of the reasons I'm recording this voiceover as well. I know a lot of people probably don't give a shit about this sort of stuff, and I don't blame you. It's more for myself, so I can watch this back in like 2 or 3 years time and laugh at how stupid my thought process was, and watch my workflow back and be like, bloody hell, so messy. I was showing a few people the graph while I was making it, which seems to be what everyone gets excited over with Substance Design, how crazy your graph is. And they were like, why haven't you labelled the graph? And the simple answer to that was, the graph was moving around so much, and because I was working on it all in like one sitting almost, it was like 3 days back to back, it didn't really leave my mind. Like, when I do designer files for work and stuff, of course I comment and leave frames and stuff, because I think it's important that people know how to use your work. But because it was just sort of like a one-off thing that I was just smashing out, I didn't need to comment anything, so I didn't forget where anything was, if that makes sense. Definitely one thing, if I was gonna put this up for download or something, I doubt anyone would be interested in getting it, but especially with this time lapse, they can just slow it down and see it for themselves. But yeah, if anyone was interested in getting it, I would definitely go in and comment and put the frames in and do all that stuff. Yeah, so here I'm just putting the hand in for the smaller clocks. I realised I've forgotten to do it, and I also had the livery to line it up to at that point, because I didn't actually have any things there earlier. This was cool. So I very simple setup. Friday worked really well. In the end, I change how this works, because I make it so I can have any day of the week I want, and certain days didn't work very well. Friday worked great for the sake of a work in progress thing, but basically what happened is I spoke to my boss at work, well, not my boss, but one of our lead artists, so he was my boss, and I was showing him the graph and asking him for his advice and stuff, and he just basically turned around and was like, do the hands move, can I select any day and seconds I want? And the answer was no at this point. I hadn't actually even considered doing it that, and I'll talk a bit more about that when we get to it, because that was definitely the biggest thing that I learned on this project. Like, it was a really simple function, like super simple, but like, yeah, I'll talk a bit more about that when we get to it, but yeah. So now we're just kind of applying some of the text and stuff, and just still grinding through all that. You can see the graph starting to get a bit messy now. I definitely group things together quite nice, so I can sort of zoom in and see what's going on and be like, okay, that section does this bit. But yeah, if I was working on this for any major length of time, I would probably have to redo some of this, because a lot of it's so dirty. And yeah, again, I'd like to apologise for how bad my workflow is. It's really bad. Like, I don't really have any kind of set workflow either. It's just whatever works. I think maybe as I use Designer more, I'll start to think a bit more sensibly, rather than just doing the grade A bodges. But yeah, I guess that's just kind of half the battle, isn't it, with a project like this? So yeah, the sort of display, I guess you call it, like the digital displays and all the texts are kind of done now. And at this point I was like, oh, this is really kind of popping now. I need to start thinking about the albedo and that. I don't know if you can see, yeah, so this is the albedo now. So what I'm doing here is I'm essentially going through my height map and getting anything that's useful. So you'll see it popping up in the top left. You see all sorts of masks, and you see I'm writing down the names of the masks. So this is the one time I use comments, and that's just because I just thought this was one part that could do with them. So I essentially go into the height map, I find a section of the thing, and then I write down what it is. And then, so for example here, I'm trying to create the blue sort of outline to this circle here. So I'm trying to grab that a little bit. So I'm using the other masks that I already have to subtract away and add from it to allow me to have, you see it's called black ring and blue ring in the end. You see it in the final render, the little sort of blue accent that goes around. And then yeah, the hands are obviously their own thing, and that will always go on top in the albedo. I believe I don't do that straight away, I have to go back and change it. And because once the hand goes over something, you want that to have priority over whatever's below it. And yeah, you can see myself going in and just trying to create the displays, and I kind of create this weird nest of it's just a complete mess of different masks and stuff, and I sort of move it over to this sort of middle ground of just hell. And that's probably the worst part of my workflow at the moment, but it's also the newest because I never used to do this, and now as I've started doing it, I find doing my albedo, especially with something like this, it's quite stylized, maybe rocks and something more organic, it would be different, but something like this, definitely in the grid and path, if you've ever seen it before, that was the first time I'd thought about doing it. It gets very easy very fast. So you see here I'm starting to plug in different textures. So essentially how it works is I have all the masks plugged into blend nodes in the alpha, and then I just have a load of different colours at the top, and I just plug in whatever colour I want, and then you can see the albedo building up here in the 2D viewport, and you essentially daisy chain them all together going up, and then boom, you have it. And we've just made it, and then I just go in and add a dust node and just do that to add a little bit of kind of curvature data on the top, which I think helped quite a lot in the end, really. And then going in and sorting out the emissive and stuff for the glowy things, which worked out in the end in the final render. So I'm really bad at low lighting. I'm bad at lighting in general, so my renders are really bad. But yeah, I think the lighting really worked out pretty well in that one. It's quite nice. Definitely a couple mistakes on bleeding onto the sides, and also the light comes from the top, not the bottom, but in real life it comes from the bottom, but I couldn't do the bottom because that's where the hands are. Because if you didn't realise, the hands are very strategically placed in a way that doesn't cover up any of the displays, for presentation. Normally watches would display 10 past 10 or 10 to 2. If you just type in watch on Google, you'll probably find most of them are like that. So yeah, I'm kind of just grinding through the last bits now, just setting up the different masks and stuff, and I believe that at this point I start slowing down because I'm like, okay, well, when I think I compare it most to a car, when you like make a car, like the body's like the main bit, but really you spend twice as long on everything else. And you see him, I've gone back in Photoshop and I'm sort of lining up the straps now, sort of creating the exact same process. I believe I get a little bit through this and then I go to bed, and then I come back the next day and I start somewhere else, so we might see this hop to somewhere else. I think any second now, I believe, and I'll just sort of hop back to the other graph. Yeah, you see, basically I went off there and now I'm back, and this is where I'd worked out the font. So basically got it set in my mind that I basically gone away and researched how to get the fonts in, and once I was happy, I was like, okay, cool, I can get the digital font in. So this is where I start writing the function. Super simple function, basically looks at the float of how many turns is done, converts it to degrees, divides it by 6, and then checks that integer against an if else thing, and if it equals a number, it displays that number as a string for the text node to just put in, and then that text node's transformed into the right spot. So yeah, it worked quite well actually. Took me a while to work out. It definitely wasn't as instant as it seemed here. I had to go and do quite a lot of research before, because I'm not a programmer by any stretch of the means, and yes, this isn't programming at all, but for me this is very, that was something that I learned a lot of, and I was quite proud of myself really. And here I believe I get a bit stuck, so I need to divide by 30. That's just for the hours. You obviously don't need many, but I basically have this problem here where I'm trying to make it so every time I put in a value into the minutes, it randomizes it and then plugs that into the seconds. I just want it to basically automate the seconds, so it's just random every time you change the minutes. But in the end, I just kind of gave up with that. I'm going to have to go talk to a tech artist about it basically. And I was already, I was kind of a bit annoyed by it, but I was just impressed with how far I'd got by myself. So it was just a case of having a slider to control the seconds instead, which to be honest worked out probably a bit better. So I don't know if you've seen that GIF of the hands spinning around, but that made that a lot more easy to control when I was basically manually going through and keep getting in each frame from the viewport in Designer. And here the text, very simple again, just a slider to control a multi-grayscale select. I'd done that way too many times before, and that worked out pretty well. But I did have to change, like I said earlier on, the way that the density, which kind of annoyed me because I like the original look of it just being like 1 pixels. Also, it's closer to real life, but I just couldn't get Monday or Wednesday or anything with a diagonal really to look right. So in the end, I doubled up and just made it smaller and just treated it like a higher resolution display, and to be honest it was fine. You see here I found out that this little nib thing was poking through, and it was really annoying me because I didn't know where it was coming from, and I'll work it out. But yeah, I believe that was overnight as well. We've kind of skipped a day as well, so this might be my last day. So yeah, I've basically started, this is Friday, so I started by bug fixing stuff that I'd noticed the day before, and then now I'm going on to the straps. So yeah, this is going to be the straps now. And the straps were kind of weird, I don't know, they're weird in real life, because you have to think about it in terms of, if you actually have the watch can't lie flat in real life. I've got it here, let me just have a look. Yeah, so the watch can't lie flat, but obviously for my renders and stuff I want it to, so I had to kind of rethink how it worked, and in the end it was fine, because obviously you can't not lie it flat in Designer. So yeah, it kind of has this weird curve, so the parts with the dots in, where it's kind of thicker at the top, that bit's kind of forced to be bent, but I kind of flatten it and then fake it with a gradient, which you'll see in a minute, which I think I'm about to do now. Just grab a curvature node and I'll just mess around with it. That's another thing, curvature nodes had such a big impact on this project. I learned a lot about them as well. I mean, I already knew what they did and I've used them loads before, but I kind of used them in a different way, if that makes sense, on this project. So that was interesting and new. Definitely a very powerful node. If you don't use it very much, and you find yourself layering loads of gradients, maybe look into that a bit more. If you find yourself kind of stuck against a wall, not really being able to work out what the solution is. And yeah, now we're just putting the dots in. You know, the straps are nothing fancy. They don't really play a major part in the render either. In the final render, I think there's just one picture of the the height normal and ambient occlusion, where they're just lying flat. But yeah, besides that, the straps are just kind of there because I wanted to do a proper job of it. I didn't really want to show them off or anything. Nothing fancy about them. It's just a strap. At the end of the day, it's the face that everyone comes for. So yeah, we're almost at the end now, because once the straps are done, that's pretty much it. We've got like 3 or 4 minutes left. The buckle was kind of interesting as well. It took me ages to get that H shape, and Timelapse made that look quite easy, but yeah, I couldn't. There's plenty of ways of doing it, and I think I went about it the completely wrong way, but I guess, again, going back to my workflow, just being a bit dirty. Yeah, and remember, at this point I was so burnt out, I wasn't thinking properly. I was just hoping to get it done, and yeah, I did get it done, but I really expected it to be done, like, rendered sooner. Like, I literally spent the whole of today, which is Saturday, and by today I mean yesterday, because it's 3 AM when I'm recording this. I spent so long just tweaking and rendering and messing around. I'm terrible at lighting. I think that's one thing I've learnt a lot as well, is the presentation part. Didn't really feel the need to time-lapse that, because this is more about the designer part of it, not so much the marmoset or anything, or the max part, where I modelled the box or anything like that. There's plenty of other time-lapses of people who are way better than me at that, so I wouldn't even try and associate myself with those people. But yeah, I think overall it went pretty well. There's definitely a few things I've learned, a few things I'd do different if I did it again. Primary one being I wouldn't do it, because it was I don't know how I got the energy to do it, to be honest. It was such a crazy stint, but yeah, I'm glad I did, because I hadn't posted on ArtStation in a while, and I thought I probably really should do so. So yeah, just the last bit of placement and redoing this, doing the longer strap up here and then combining them together, and that's it. But if you've managed to get this far, just a personal thank you. Maybe even message me. I'm assuming anyone who gets this far in the video knows me in real life. So yeah, hi, whoever you are. And if I don't know you in real life, shoot a comment down, or if you don't feel like doing that, thanks for listening to my shit for so long, and yeah, I hope you learned something. And like I said, maybe go slow down the video in parts where you where you're interested in how I've done things. And to be honest, it's more for myself, like I said, this thing. So hi Dan from the future. I'm sure that he's watching this and hating every second of it. But yeah, we're almost there now. We've done the straps. I think we just need to do the roughness and metallic maps, and then yeah, the last little bits. I had this weird bug where these little strip of pixels wouldn't go. I ended up cutting them out in max because I couldn't be bothered at this point. And yeah, there's the final graph just going in, and so now we're just taking it into marmoset. I thought I'd leave a little bit of this in just so you guys could see how I go about doing it. I just kind of chuck AO on the planes and put them in. But yeah, that's how we do it. It's nothing, it's nothing too complicated. It's just lots of simple things done after each other in a very grindy way. There's nothing really groundbreaking here. It's just a lot of, like I say, a lot of small things combined. So yeah, thank you for your time. Like I said, I hope you learned something. And yeah, if you're interested in any more time lapses, let me know, and I'll definitely do more. There is already a few on there, so if this is the first one I see, and there's a couple more. They're all modelling. This is the only design I've got. But yeah, thank you guys, and